Welcome everybody. We are here for the February forecast. We're going to take a look at what is coming up. And to start with, I just want to say this is Friday. The date is January 26th. And tonight is the night that the Uranus planet moves forward. Right? It is going forward. It's the last of the laggards. All the planets that go retrograde, usually during the summer and into the fall, this is now ready to be in forward direction. So we've got a couple of months ahead of us where we can reasonably assume that based on all of our review and reconsideration and slowing things down to understand what our best options are, that we can now go, yes, as Tamara says, all systems go for, 2 months before we get the next Mercury retrograde. But nevertheless, in terms of having Uranus direct, I think that this ties in very nicely with the fact that Pluto has now gone into Aquarius. We are having Aquarius season with planets moving through Aquarius. So in my mind, there's a certain lightness, a certain sense of possibility and change. It's like we've been feeling like we're in the mud, and a heaviness, a slowness, especially with Pluto having been in that, last degree, last minutes of Capricorn. Now, I know we'll come back. Everybody's making a big deal about the fact Pluto's gone into Aquarius. But remember, this is only the second of 3 times over 2 years that it goes into Aquarius before it's finally in. So we're not out of the woods yet with Pluto being that deep transformative force that is exposing the perils of the patriarchy and government and big business. And we're still in a mess. And I have to say that I never expected it to still be this hard at this point in time. I really thought we would have made more progress by the late teens, early 20s, date-wise. I thought that Pluto's hard work of excavating the corruption, we would be building new structures and building bridges and finding, as a different philosophy to carry us into this challenging age of understanding how to navigate the planet. But apparently it's going to need Pluto in Aquarius to move things faster and come up with the ideas and the inventions. And there are already so many inventions. Just over the weekend when Pluto came into Aquarius, I was, just so scanning through various news headlines, and I'm going to go back and write them down, but there's some new thing that, takes electricity out of the air and turns into electricity, and there's new ideas about, well, I think Gavin Newsom announced, 27 desalinization plants. So, that makes sense, right? If we've got rising seawater and we're running out of drinking water and, usable agricultural water, if we take all that extra ocean we have and we take the salt out of it and then we use it, they were saying that 80% of the water in California gets used for agriculture. So, it's not just watering our lawns or drinking water. We grow the food for ourselves and a lot of the country and a lot of the world here. And so finding ways to shift, change, advance this, all of this Aquarian energy will. So this is the new moon for February. It is on Friday, February 9th, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and it is at 20 degrees, 41 minutes of the 21 degrees, 40 minutes of Aquarius. And at the same time, we have Pluto. You can see it's about a half a degree into the sign of Aquarius. And I will just remind you that in 2020, when Saturn and Jupiter joined together in Aquarius at the end of 2020 to create a 20-year cycle, it was about half a degree of Aquarius. So Pluto, and for the week before that, Mercury, are lining up and reminding us of the Aquarian cycle that launched in 2020. And now Pluto is bringing its full attention to that initiating degree. If you remember from our talk last week about 0 degrees of a sign being a powerful degree, and it has to do with that full birthing and that full energy of the sign, but in a way that maybe doesn't understand what's going to happen down the road. It's kind of like a new moon, right? If you're a new moon person, born new moon time, you are birthed into the world with a lot of intensity about what it is you believe you are doing. You're starting something, you're launching something, and you're excited about it. As a soul, you're jumping in. Again, as Tamara said, all systems go. That's new moon energy. But you don't know what you're doing. You're going to be shocked, surprised, and disappointed when the whole world doesn't agree with you and they fight against you. And when you get to the quarter moon phase, you really do get into the challenges, into the fighting and trying to make your way with what you're initiating. So we have that sense here with this first new moon. It's like we're in new territory and we care about it deeply. We'll also see that Venus and Mars are lined up with Pluto, even though they are in Capricorn. Venus, as we know, is the planet of relationship, how we draw to us and stabilize relationship, how we draw to us resources. Mars, we go after it. Mars is competitive and assertive and willful. These two planets in the more structured sign of Capricorn that has to do with building something, being successful, having a certain sense of longevity, they are lined up with that powerful energy of Pluto. And Pluto in the sign of Aquarius we can think of as transforming and going really, really deep about technology, advancements, innovation, progressive ideas. So we get, as we're opening out into the month with this new moon, we have on one hand this mental energy Mercury thinking about, communicating about new ideas, new advancements, that Pluto is bringing up sort of the deeper ideas of what needs to happen, as well as exposing where we have problems, where we have situations that are not humanitarian, where we have situations where the technology is out of alignment and it's not working. We're seeing already a little bit of this Pluto in Aquarius with a number of tech companies that are proving, now showing, to be not working. And somebody that I know in the tech world had said to me a couple of months ago that in 2024, a lot of tech companies would go out of business or would lay a lot of people off because the things that they got funded for, their reason for being, is not actually working and they're not actually doing anything. And Pluto being the exposer of corruption, or the exposer of what isn't working, is going to be bringing that up. Now, at the same time, it's going to show what is working and there'll be new advancements. And that's what we always see with a lot of strong Aquarian energy is there's new discoveries, new research. A lot of that is coming out in the medical field because we've got tech and medical working together very strongly at this point. So this whole stellium with this new moon is huge around looking at older structural issues, working together, making things happen, going deep, and then launching. And we can see that the Venus part of it, Venus, Mars even, is in a trine to Uranus, the Aquarian planet. And the Aquarian planet has to do with the same thing of what are we building? How are we making things happen and changing what needs to change? You see here, but at this point, Jupiter and Uranus are quite tight, quite close together. Their actual conjunction, setting up their synodic cycle for the next 13, 14 years, is going to be on April 20th. And they are also, when they come together every approximately 14 years, it is often a time also of inventions, of new discoveries, ideas, new philosophies that suddenly just come into our social construct, and everything turns on its head. Things are very different. Even now, we are in that phase. We are in the phase where they're close enough together that you're going to see babies who are born around now and in these next few months are quite bright, right? Steve Jobs was born with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Lots of people who have innovative new ideas and have that expansive energy to take it out into the world, they are born with this connection. So notice that this is connected very strongly to the Capricorn and Aquarius energy that is happening at the birth of this new moon. We still have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Saturn is moving along, kind of covering these next few degrees, and will spend the rest of the year going back and forth, in the middle degrees or so of Pisces. I think it's like 13, 14 degrees up to 22, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but we're past the early degrees of Pisces. If you've had planets there in Pisces or Virgo, this first piece, this first year going back to last March of restructuring, maturing, and stabilizing your spiritual, intuitive, compassionate, creative energies. This process of the first 10 degrees is pretty much done, and now we start to work on the middle decan. Okay? So we still all have this mandate to be very careful, to have a deep spiritual path so that we avoid the pitfalls of Pisces, which are overwhelm, being sick, falling into dependencies and numbing out. So have as much clarity as you can possibly have with this combination still very strong. We're still, of course, for the whole year working with South Node in Libra, letting go of ways that we give ourselves up too much, and finding ways to go for what we want and be more independent and connect to our life force and our vitality. I don't know if any of you are feeling this strongly. I'm certainly feeling it as someone who, has angles in Aries, Libra, and strong planets. What I'm noticing about it is a little bit like we have just even in our own nodal axis that, like, I'm feeling the desire not to give myself up too much for others and to do what I want to do. But it doesn't necessarily mean I can do it yet. Like, it doesn't feel like with the nodal axis, it feels hard. It feels like the energies are kind of locked in place in some way. And I think we'll find that, as always, as we have the eclipses, and those eclipses are going to be at the end of March and the 8th of April, very strong solar eclipse, that, the eclipses will help us break free. So this lunar node energy in our charts, in a certain way, is a little bit like background noise. It's like you're aware of where your relationships are out of balance. You might be aware of what would feel alive and free and fresh for you, and what you would do if there was nothing tethering you. But you're going to feel those tethers and those responsibilities and the choices you've already made. And like it is working with our natal lunar nodes, it takes some definite process, thinking things through and making new choices that feel uncomfortable to work with this. And Chiron is getting closer and closer to that north node. They will be joined soon. And when things are close together, in my mind, the tension is greater. We feel it stronger. Once it's exact, a lot of the energy dissipates and we don't feel quite as compelled about it. Chiron in Aries is saying, look at whatever woundedness you have that tells you you can't do what you want. Who told you that? Who told you you couldn't, do this or that or the other? And question that. The whole sign of Aquarius and the planet Uranus is always about questioning authority, questioning the status quo and what they always say and what they told us. Aquarius asks us to come into our absolute authentic sense of self, that self that arises from our high self, operating in this world in our own way, filled with light, filled with the power of our beingness. This chart is asking us to step into that. And you can notice, like we've already been dealing with for a lot of the last year, the planets are very close together. I mean, this is a very bundled chart with a focus only in a trine level of connection. So wherever this falls in your chart, this is the highlighted area. This is the focus. Those few houses in your chart is where all the energy and the activity is. Yes, South Node says a little bit of letting go. Here we have the part of fortune, which only relates to the new moon itself and what the rising sign was at that point of the new moon. So we won't overly worry about that, but know that you are transforming and restructuring and surrendering and breaking free and being aligned with your beliefs from the signs of Capricorn through to Taurus. So from, northern hemisphere winter into the full spring, the planting of seeds. Okay. Now we work with the full moon, February 24th, 7:31 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:31 Pacific. Okay. And this full moon is at 5 degrees of Virgo. Okay. And it is opposite the sun, as a full moon always is, but the sun is connected to Mercury and Saturn. Saturn, of course, we know, is the energy of mastery, success, accomplishment. It's what takes us into deep karmic, compelling structures. It asks us to work hard toward our true long-term goals. And as we saw when we were looking at the new moon, that, we are deeply working around the whole Pisces construct of compassion, intuition, spirituality, transcendent creativity, understanding that we are oneness, that we are all one, all of the humans in the world, all of the animals, the plants, the trees, the water, the sky. We are all part of this same fabric of existence. This full moon, I think, asks us to understand that deeply, to think about it with Mercury there, and to feel that call, which Neptune in Pisces has been bringing to us now for many, many years, since about 2010, 2011, we've had Neptune drawing us to this higher frequency, which in its shadow energy also includes tragic losses, water damage, the floods, the hurricanes, the illnesses, the suffering around, rampant addictions. So we have in every planet and every sign, we have what it's really here to do, and we have what happens when it's just activated in a less evolved way. But it holds the light. Neptune in Pisces holds the light for us and reminds us how we're connected, helps us open up our telepathic and psychic connections to each other, to the animals, to spirit guides. Saturn, aligned with this particular full moon, I think, adds a kind of an extra dimension of what choices, Sun, might you want to make to deepen your connection. I would say right now to any of you who have been thinking about joining my Saturday intuitive group, it's going to start again on March 9th, right after this full moon. You might think about that. It's just about to be posted for registration. Or on the Friday classes, when I'm doing classes with meditation and psychic opening, very good to practice these skills and talents in this kind of format when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, when you're feeling something inside yourself that you're motivated to do something, or you're feel an intuitive hit about what's actually true versus what you're hearing, what you're being told, that you have a way to understand the difference, to understand the difference between fear and intuition, between anxiety and a really deep message. This is why we develop our intuitive gift. Now, with the moon in Virgo, with full moons, you can attune yourself to two things. You can say, on one hand, I'm standing at a fullness. I'm standing at completion, a sense of accomplishment, a little bit of maybe the full mountaintop or something's totally done, or maybe it's just a small hill and you take stock of where you're at and then you move and keep going up to the next hill and the next hill. But the moon asks us to consider, are there any habit patterns that need to be let go of at this point? Is there anything emotional that's happening that stands in the way of this full expression of that high frequency soul or vibration? And moon in Virgo, habit pattern is most likely to be about self-criticism, strong inner critic, pickiness, perfectionism that holds us back. Sometimes, the perfectionism and the fixing, solving problem ability of Virgo is amazing. But sometimes the standards are so high and the inner critic is so loud that the person with strong Virgo has a really hard time starting and making it happen because the fear of failure is huge. So if that's you, if you feel that and you resonate with that, know that this moon is asking you to come more fully into the Pisces side, into the surrender and trust and the realization that you are part of this oneness and that it's not all on you and you don't have to be perfect, that you're good enough. Good enough parent, good enough friend, good enough healer, whatever it is you're doing. Allow this full moon to remind you that you're good enough And you can keep surrendering and trusting into that Pisces vibration and holding whatever level of stabilization, structure, organization, and work allows you to keep expanding the Pisces side of you, expanding your intuitive gifts, letting yourself be sensitive and emotional, letting yourself do creativity just for the joy of it. When I say creativity, I'm not saying you have to paint a beautiful picture and it goes in a gallery. Pisces creativity can be listening to music, knitting and noticing the beauty of the yarns, the colors, the softness, throwing paint on a piece of paper and moving the paper around, just seeing the patterns it makes. Pisces is the delight of a child in the small things in life. So, go for that. Let that Pisces, as we move into February and we get more and more Pisces, let that Pisces inspire you to be in the joy and the oneness of this world. Now you can see here that we have quite an interesting stellium in Aquarius at the time of the full moon. So we've got now Pluto moved all the way to over 1 degree, Mars at 8, almost 9, Venus at 9, almost 10. So those first 10 degrees of Aquarius are totally lit with the 3 planets that are fundamentally about relationship. I mean, they can be about other things too, right? I mean, we know that there can be competition and anger and hostility in Mars, and there can be rage and anger and transformation in Pluto. But on a personal level, if Venus is that capacity to attract relationship, and Mars is the going for it energy that's about will and desire and holds our passions, Mars is like the go for it sexually, where we go for who we want or we go for physical pleasure. But Pluto takes us into the depth, into the psychological connections and that deep soul-centered penetrating sexuality. So we are, this is February 24th, sort of, hats off to Valentine's Day. That'll be between the new moon and the full moon. While we're building into this Aquarius energy, I would say that this brings us into deep, intense relationship with another person if we're connected to another person. Will ask for us to be very certain we can be authentically ourselves, or else we will feel very strong and compelled to make shifts to allow us to be seen. This brings us into a deep relationship with ourselves personally, and because there is something about Aquarius where you're very self-contained, and it's like you don't mind having friends or connections as long as they don't impact your ability to pivot, your ability to be fully yourself and express yourself. And, with the square to Uranus, this is particularly strong. I would say that any children born with this particular astrological configuration is going to be very unique in what they want in relationship and the way that they're here to transform and heal and change the world in alignment with their community, in alignment with the tribe of people that they feel aligned with. But for us, think about where these planets are in your chart, where Uranus is at 19, almost 20 degrees of Taurus, and also Jupiter at 10. So Jupiter is the most strongly connected, so the two together. So belief, philosophy, breaking free, being authentic, yet still paying attention to what makes you feel grounded and secure, and finding a way to blend that creatively with this strong group of will-oriented, intense, transformational free relationship energies. That is a giant, giant level of energy. And we can see the connections that also run from the Pisces energy to the Taurus. So this is a sextile, which is flowing but fast and interesting. So the Taurus energies are also going to be lined up with this moon. And the Taurus energies are lined up so strongly with the Aquarius. This is a very potent and powerful full moon. It's not an eclipse, but I feel pretty strong that we will all feel it in our chart and it will motivate us to the next direction. And again, it's still almost everything is in a small few degrees of signs. It's even smaller, nothing in Capricorn at this point. It's starting at Aquarius and going through into Taurus. And then, of course, opposite the handle, that moon in Virgo. Questions or comments about the moons and the energy of the month? I wonder if any of you have also been feeling this balance between relationship, other people, and your own desire to do what you want. And I'll start with you, Mariah, with your hand up.
Sure. I'm just looking at the North Node traveling with Chiron, and I'm wondering, when I'm thinking about that combination, I'm sort of looking at the North Node as Jupiterian words like increase and expansion of the Chironic energy, but I'm wondering if that is too simplistic or how else you might interpret the sort of North Node increase traveling with the planet. And then to answer your question, yes, I'm feeling that balance between independence and partnership and not feeling like the time is right to do anything, but feeling it.
What do you mean? I'm trying to get to the essence of your question. Like Chiron being with the North Node, which, by the way, by the time we get to this full moon, since the North Node's going backwards, they've crossed over and they're moving farther apart at this point. So where we are right now for the next month is when we are, moving into greater and greater alignment between the two of them. But they have a similar energy. And I would add Saturn to that. And you do see a number of people who are born with Saturn, North Node, and Chiron all in Aries. And I think of that as like the trifecta of you must develop Aries energy. Okay, because Chiron says you're wounded in your Aries energy. You think you're not brave, courageous, free enough, and you can't do what you want. But actually you can, and your life proves it. Okay? So Chiron by transit goes to that degree spot of Aries in your chart and says, wake up to your full potential here. You can do more Aries. In fact, you think you're wounded here, but the wound that you think you have is what makes you ideally suited to help others come into their Aries energy. You're a natural teacher and healer of all things Aries. And then the North Node transiting says, good things will come to you from Aries. Go for it. Be filled with your courage and bravery, your life force and vitality. And if you had Saturn in Aries, it would say that this Aries is what you must work on, that you come into this life with a mandate to develop Aries consciousness to its highest, most elevated, powerful structural level. And of course, Saturn will move into Aries late 2025. And, the next round of people going through their Saturn returns are going to have Saturn return in Aries. Right now, Saturn return is happening for people with Pisces Saturn. But yeah, it's all the same because it's all about a wound to Aries energy. So this amplifies the Aries. But it's just a slightly different flavor.
Okay. I'm trying to work on how I read planetary pairs, and I've been trying to just look more and go, okay, well, say the North Node is traveling with Chiron, but it could be traveling another time with any of the planets, other than just saying that increases or adds another point of emphasis, like as a combination, a planetary combination. I realize the words I'm using to describe the North Node all sound like Jupiter. It's like increase, expansion, adding more attention there. And I don't want to be overly...
Yeah, one thing I want to say is we got to remember, North Node and Chiron are not planets. So it's really different than, say, where we're talking about Jupiter and Uranus, right? And they're traveling together, two planets in the same sign, and they're going to join together in April and create a synodic cycle that then for 13 years is playing out with almost like, an opening square between them when Jupiter is going to be square to the position of Uranus, and then like a full moon position where Jupiter is opposite Uranus, closing square and back down. And it's a whole cycle of those two planets working in connection with each other. Chiron, which was thought to be a planet when it was discovered in the late 70s, and then they thought it was an asteroid. They don't even know what it is, and they think maybe it's a comet and will blow out after a while and won't even exist. But it was said in the late 70s when it was discovered to be really related to this whole healing issue and holistic healing, and is been sort of assigned to that role. Seems to hold true, seems to work wherever Chiron is. We do see that woundedness that one has to deal with. And then the North Node, of course, is where the path of the sun and the path of the moon are crossing, and it shows that this is where there is an emphasis toward positivity, development. At least that's how we interpret it in modern Western astrology. If you look at Vedic astrology, Jyotish, they kind of think the South Node and the North Node are both bad. Bad things happen around them. Bad things happen around eclipses, things that are hard to handle. The only way that the South Node works in Vedic astrology is if you are a spiritual person who's given up the ways of the world, and then you can be in alignment with the positive side of it. But mostly it gets interpreted in a more negative way. But we interpret it in Western astrology by transit, that it is bringing to you soul-centered, positive kinds of experiences. So yes, maybe we could say in a way it's a little bit like Jupiter in what it's doing. And Chiron is a little bit like Pluto. If I was going to try to define these two as planets, with Chiron, like Pluto, you have this deep wound, but if you work with it and integrate the lessons and feel the feelings, and Chiron brings up a lot of shame and pain, just like Pluto does. If you deal with that and become empowered with it, it becomes your greatest strength. And where the North Node is going, if you activate it, then you are expanded in that sign and in that part of your chart.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It always sounds so beautiful the way you describe it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It was great. Okay, Tamara, you're next.
So these aren't questions. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. It was interesting how Jung, when he was alive, Dr. Jung, when he said that he thought that there'd be a planet discovered that fit Chiron's, what he was talking about Chiron, but we discovered it after he died. It was interesting. He said, I think there's going to be something of this that fulfills like the hurt that we go through, you know. And he said it would happen right around, you know, the 51 years, you know. Anyway, so the other comment I wanted to make is Sedna has been trining Capricorn. It's been tracking the Capricorn Pluto, you know, exactly. I mean, not exactly, but pretty close. Like it's been going back and forth between the two signs that it's in, and while Pluto is doing this whole ingressing into, you know, it's what's happening is Sedna is doing her ingressing as well, and they both are bringing in tech and AI. It's just very interesting how it's not just the Pluto ingressing into Aquarius that's bringing in the AI, but it's also Sedna is trining Pluto, and she's bringing in the AI as well. So it's just crazy how, you know, we're just going to double down on all this.
Yeah.
And then I had a third point, and it's totally out of my mind.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I don't really follow Sedna yet. Maybe I will at some point, but I feel like I'm tracking enough in the sky at this point.
Well, she only goes around once every 12,000 years. So basically, it's just that right now she's doing the dance as Pluto's doing his dance between the two signs. She's doing her dance between the two signs, and they keep tracking as a trine.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. And Annika.
Yes. Hello. I don't have a question, more a comment. As someone with like my sun in Virgo, I found it interesting with the full moon description, what you said about like a chance to let go of being perfect, and how that kind of stops me from moving forward, and the fear of failure and how that relates. And then I also have South Node in Libra and North Node in Aries. And for a while I have felt much more energy and more easier to find time to do what I want to do, which is writing. I can wake up and then like 5 minutes after I have woken up, just sit down and write. That's changed, and at the same time I feel myself a bit, I give a little bit stamping on the same spot. It's a little bit frustration around that, but I also feel that I can't go back somehow. Like the only way is forward. Like the way forward is a bit scary, but that's like the way I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm sure just having the nodal return that you're having is putting a lot of pressure on you to go forward and do these things that you want to do in the world and not give yourself up so much. And it's hard. Like I know you have a small child and, you have children. There's an agreement to give yourself up, right? I mean, that's what mothering is about. And yet still that urge to do what you're here to do. And maybe that means not doing everything as perfectly as you're inclined to do so that there's more time, right?
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
True.
Thank you. Diane?
Yeah, hi. I was just looking at the first chart that you showed, the new moon and the full moon, and basically it's based out of Washington. And now I realize that you have the transits. Well, first you have the natal chart. So anyone who is born on that new moon, those are basically going to be their natal chart. and I guess where I'm trying to understand is in the transits. Okay, so this, you're showing the natal in Washington. Do you have the transit for the new moon?
This is the new moon transit. This is when the new moon is happening.
Okay, and so basically it's not, okay, so I guess my question is, are those the transits for Washington, D.C. For February 9th?
Yes. So what those that is the chart of the moment set for
Okay.
Washington, D.C. when the new moon happens exactly. Now, you would put this on someone else's chart and have it be the transit around their chart. You could put the U.S. Sibley chart in the middle and have this be around and interpret more distinctly how the United States is affected. But this, picking the Eastern time zone is something that most astrologers do living in America.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the transits that are going to occur for Washington, D.C. on the new moon. This is really the natal chart of anyone who is born on February the 9th. That's going to be basically their planet. So I guess my question previously was, I see that Pluto is in the 6th house, and the 6th house also covers illness. And I guess if the transit for the U.S., but you would have to show the transits for the U.S. And I guess my question was, if there's illness, how does it affect the U.S.? But I guess that question is not relevant unless we superimpose the U.S. in the new moon and see the transits that are occurring for the U.S.
I wouldn't. Yeah, this is the chart of the moment of the new moon. So you could say it's a new moon ingress chart, and depending on where it's set for, the sort of that energy of the moment, and in that way, yes, this could have something to do with health and some launch, but it can also be workers, like that's another interpretation. But I'm not doing mundane astrology. I'm not really, and if you were doing that, you would look at the chart of Washington, D.C. in the middle and put this around it, which would mean this would not fall in those same houses. It would fall differently, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think you're complicating it in a way that it doesn't need to be complicated. And what's more important is how it's falling into your chart and where this new moon is activating you to move forward.
Yeah. Okay. So now I understand when you show the charts for the new moon and the full moon, it's basically just the chart of the moment. And then it's up to us. If we want to look at our charts, then we just do the transits. Or if we want to do the mundane, then we would do the U.S. or Canada or what have you, and look at the transit and where, which houses, it falls in, and how Pluto might activate, obviously Pluto activating the 6th house, for a baby born on February 9th, it's going to be in that 6th house for quite a while.
No, it's not. No.
Oh?
No, if the baby is born on February 9th, it will depend on what time of day they're born. So only if they're born at 6 p.m.
Right.
Coast will they have that. But
right.
If they're born later, it's all going to change. Yeah.
Yeah, but based on that chart, if the baby was born at that time, that's basically the natal chart that baby would have, and would have basically a stellium of Aquarius planets in the 6th house.
Yes, if that baby was born at 6 p.m. Eastern time, they would have that stellium. They would be a very hard revolutionary worker.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Tamara.
Thank you. I did remember the third thing. So with this whole ingress into Aquarius and the sun shining on it and everything like this, Texas is talking about receding from the Union. So I thought that was, the whole president wanting to put the governor of Texas in jail, and and so Texas is saying, well, in our Constitution we have the right to recede from the Union. So I thought that was perfect for the transit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can imagine. We've got quite a lot of revolutionary energy. One of the things about Aquarian energy is, this ability to split, to separate, to either feel rejected and sent away, or to leave and to reject others. So,
yes. Texas is their own republic.
Yeah.
So they're the only ones that put that into their Constitution when they joined the United States.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, living here in California, we want to join with Oregon and Washington and secede also. So I think maybe it's time to split this country into regions, and have it be more like Europe, where you've got, different countries that are smaller and have their own vibration.
I think that Texas is going to lead the way for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm okay with that. we can, these land definitions are pretty bizarre anyway.